Trust is a tough virtue to master. Trust is one of the most valuable things you can give someone. Though, what do you do when that gift is broken, even more so by the person you trust the most? Well, Bernadette Walker, who is 17 years old, told someone close to her about a terrible thing that happened, but this person lied to her instead of helping her. Yes, but that's only the beginning. They didn't see Bernadette again the next day, on July 18th, 2020. Bernadette Walker's case is not only scary, but it also makes you wonder who you can really trust. Since Bernadette asked her close family for help but didn't get it, instead, they turned away from her. It was December 13th, 2002, when Bernadette Walker was born, and the case today takes place in Peterborough, Cambridgeshire, England. Sarah Louise, Bernadette's mother. Bernadette's mother broke up with her biological father sometime after she was born, but we don't know what happened between them. Bernadette was more commonly known as B by her family and close friends. She was shy around new people, but her friends and family thought of her as a fun-loving, bubbly, and all-around great person to be with. B liked photography and other kinds of art. Everywhere B went, she had her camera with her. This was why, after graduating high school, B enrolled in Peterborough College, where she was studying photography. There were also big plans for B to leave her hometown of Peterborough and live in the United States after school. Like most teens, B loved social media. Because she was shy and quiet, she liked talking to her friends online more than in person. B also liked to knit, and her grandmother taught her how to do it. There was a strong bond between them, and B was close with her whole family. Everyone who knew B thought she was a sweet, open, and honest person who only wanted to follow her dreams. When B was very young, her mum Sarah met a guy named Scott Walker. Sarah and Scott lived next door to each other. She moved in with him in 2006, already having 5 kids and being heavily pregnant with her 6th. That's a lot of kids, so you can imagine how crazy B's home life must have been. Sarah, her mother, was also taking care of all of these kids by herself. See, Sarah went from one relationship to another after her relationship with B's biological father didn't work out. She never really found someone she was ready to settle down with. Because of this, Sarah's 6 kids all had different dads. Scott, Sarah's new neighbor, was already married when B, Sarah, and the kids moved in next door. Scott and his wife Jill met in August 2004 when she was a single mum with 2 teenage boys. They had been together for about 2 years by this time. At first, Jill thought Scott was a very caring and loving person, and they quickly became together. Scott moved in with Jill and her sons in less than 2 months. But this is when Jill saw that Scott's personality had changed in a very scary way. He became possessive and needed to know all the time if Jill was seeing someone else while they were together. Jill says that this all came out of nowhere and was a complete surprise. Scott was a very sneaky jerk. He made very scary threats, even though Jill said he never hit her during a heated argument. And let's be honest, a voice can be a lot more harmful than a fist on occasion. All of this made Jill feel like she had no chance. Jill was abused badly by Scott very quickly, but she couldn't bear the thought of leaving him. After being together for 10 months, Scott asked Jill to marry him, which shocked both of you. Scott had Jill trapped and pushed into a corner where she could be abused, so she felt like she had no choice but to say yes. I'm not sure if Jill really believed that getting married would make things better, or if she was just afraid. But it broke my heart to learn this. Starting with their wedding in 2005, things got worse between them. Scott was rude and needy, and there was no excuse for the way he acted. Jill could tell right away in their marriage that Scott had no respect for her and only wanted things from her. This went on for a while until Scott set his sights on Sarah Louise, his new neighbor. Jill saw her husband flirting with Sarah all the time. However, Jill wasn't upset or troubled by Scott's cheating. As morbid as it sounds, Jill wanted Sarah to have Scott so that she could get away from a man who abused her and used her emotions against her. Seeing him make Sarah feel good, it made her very happy. Jill saw this as a way out, so she and a friend packed her bags and left Scott. They even gave him a protective order that said he couldn't be near her. Scott didn't mind at all when Jill left because he quickly fell in love with Sarah. At this point, Bea was only a toddler, but she looked up to Scott and even called him Dad, which breaks my heart because I know what happens later. While Sarah and Scott were still not legally married, Sarah changed her last name to Walker and gave it to all of her children. It's very clear now how serious Sarah was about her new relationship. Sarah and Scott also had 4 more children of their own. If you're not good at maths, that means there are 10 kids living in a house with only 5 bedrooms. Without a doubt, there were many people and many points of view in this house. Sarah worked with older people, while Scott did a lot of different odd jobs. One thing was always the same, though. Scott loved to brag on social media. He always bragged about himself on social media, acting like he was someone he's not. But things were not at all good in the Walker home. For sure, they were very dangerous. Anthony, one of Bea's brothers, came forward and said that Scott abused everyone in the family physically and verbally. Anthony went on to say that Scott had affairs with many different women and was cheating on Sarah. Anthony also told us something else disturbing about Scott. He put cameras in every room of the house, even the bathroom for the family. Take a moment to really understand that. There are 10 kids in the house, and Scott has TVs in each bathroom. To be fair to Scott, the cameras were there to catch Bea red-handed when she hid candy wrappers in toilet paper rolls. I feel like things are going to get a lot worse, though. It was July 2020, and things were not getting better at the Walker house. Scott was 50 years old at the time, Sarah was 37 and had just given birth to a daughter in June, and Bea was 17 years old. Sarah was ready for a change too, because she was sick of Scott's lies and bad behavior. Scott and Sarah were no longer together, and Sarah was seeing someone else, Chris O'Connell. But this whole thing seemed very strange. Scott still lived with the Walkers, even though he and Sarah were no longer together. Scott even took things a step further and gave Sarah rules to follow when she was seeing Chris. This man, I don't even have words. According to Scott, Sarah was only allowed to stay over at Chris's house 2 days out of the week. Also, Chris was never allowed to stay over at the Walker house. Now that rule, I get that one. It's Scott's house too, at least I think. But to tell someone who isn't your wife, isn't your partner, she's literally nothing but a roommate at this point, when she can and can't see her boyfriend, that's just beyond the realm of understanding. Now let's go to July 17th, 2020. Around 10 p.m., Scott drove Bea to his parents' house in Warrington. Bea wore only black clothes, a blue denim jacket, and black glasses with thick frames. Bea's phone was taken away by Scott during the ride, but we don't know why. Scott's parents say Bea was clearly upset when she got home. Anyway, Bea went to sleep around midnight on July 18th and woke up the next morning. Around 10:25 a.m., Scott came to get Bea and take her home. Bea never got home, though. In his words, Scott had stopped for a cigarette near Skater's Way when B threw open the car door and ran off. Scott tried to catch up to her, but failed, so he ended up going back home. Although Sarah noticed that Scott looked tired and was about to cry when she saw him coming home, she didn't think much of it. Think back to the time when she didn't care about him at all. What was scary was that B's mother, Sarah, didn't report her daughter missing for 3 days, even though she knew she hadn't come home with Scott right away. Being like this from a mother is not normal at all. Parents, especially mothers, call the police right away when their child goes missing. Why did Sarah wait so long to tell someone that her daughter was missing? What took place in those 3 days? Things did happen, and we're about to find out that B really couldn't do anything. Not even her own mother was there for her. Some pretty scary details about this case have come to light in the years since it happened. It was clear that B was in pain. The woman she grew up with had a violent father, and her mother was almost never in her life. We don't know if she did this on purpose or because she was busy raising 10 kids, but it's awful either way. When B was going through the worst, and the person who was hurting her the most was someone she called Dad. It turned out that Scott was using B in a nightmare that lasted almost 7 years, while Sarah didn't know. That was sad, but it wasn't all. Being B's other parent, she thought she could get safety and comfort from her mother. B was wrong again, though. Even though she told her mother what Scott had been doing to her, her mother didn't believe her. She lied about her own daughter. Keep in mind that this is coming from a man who openly abused his family and had affairs with other women. He also abused his family when he was married. Do you really think he wouldn't use a young girl for his own gain? Now, I do my best to stay calm when I present these cases, but what a stupid person. That is a shame and a complete waste of breath. Your whole world changes when you have a child. It's your job to love, trust, and protect your kids at all times. But this disgusting mother didn't do anything. Just to make things even worse, B's mother told her that she would kill her if she ever told anyone else about what they had talked about. I can't believe Sarah would stand up for a narcissistic and abusive man instead of her own daughter. She was planning to leave him anyway. What a waste of a childhood. Things did not end there, though. Sarah called to say her daughter was missing 3 days after B had ran away. The operator asked some simple questions, and Sarah's answers were already very suspicious. Sarah got a text message from B saying that she was staying with Luke, her ex-boyfriend, after she had run away. The operator, on the other hand, didn't understand why Sarah or Scott hadn't called or visited Luke to see B. The operator knew right away that something wasn't right. No matter what, the detective started looking for B in nearby areas. Police looked for B in Gunthorpe, Newborough, and other places in Peterborough and Cambridgeshire, but they couldn't find her. Investigators also looked through Scott and Sarah's phones and found a lot of strange things that eventually let them down. To begin, Scott's phone use on July 18th was very strange and all over the place. See, his phone was turned off from 11:23 a.m. to 12:54 p.m. after he picked up B from his parents' house. Cell phone activity also showed that he and Sarah went to the same place more than once after B was disappeared. It was a locked garage in Walton that belonged to his parents. It's scary that Scott also stopped there on the day he was supposed to bring B home from visiting his parents. The police went out right away to search this locked-up garage. They didn't find B, but they did find a rucksack that belonged to her. The police took this rucksack right away as evidence, and what they found inside helped them figure out how much trouble B was in. B has kept a diary and written in it since she was a child. The police were shocked by one entry in the journal, which said, "Told my mum about my dad and the abuse. She lied to me and said she would kill me if I told the police." Who would not believe their daughter? Seeing B's sadness come through in these words in her diary breaks my heart. It was very bad for her that she was wrong to think that Sarah would be on her side. The police weren't done looking, though. Also, they decided to ask B's friends about Scott's abuse, and most of them told them more. Warren Naylor, one of B's friends, said that she had told him that she thought Scott was using her. Warren later said that B sent him a message on Instagram on July 19th, one day after she seemed to have run away, saying that she had lied about the abuse. But remember that Scott took B's phone while they were on their way to his parents' house. B couldn't get to her phone, so how could she text her friends or even her mum Sarah to ask them to stay the night at Luke's? At this point, the case took yet another strange turn. After digging around, the police found that the messages sent to Sarah and B's friends came from B's phone, even though she wasn't the one who sent them. It was Sarah, who was her mother. People thought that Scott lost it when he found out that B had told her mother about all of his disgusting actions. He then allegedly attacked B and killed her on the way back to her house from visiting his parents. So Scott cut B out of the picture. He didn't want his dirty laundry to get aired out and get him kicked out of the house. That wasn't all, though. Do you remember that Scott's phone was off for a while? So it is said that Scott killed B during this time, which was about 91 minutes, and then threw her body away, miles away from home. After that, the first person he called was Sarah. No one knows what was said on the 9-minute call, but the police thought it might have been them talking about how to hide the fact that B had been killed. It's so cruel and unbelievable. But the truth is that Scott did terrible things no matter how you look at them. But what about Sarah? She talked about covering up the murder of her own daughter over the phone with the person who killed her. Didn't she feel any guilt? It's scary to think that Sarah coordinated the plan to send texts from B's phone to make it look like she was talking to her family and friends, when in fact Scott and Sarah were the ones who did it. It's hard to understand how little B's mother cared about her, but this shows it. Scott and Sarah Walker were arrested on September 14th, 2020, on charges of murder and perverting the course of justice. This was based on statements from B's friends and brother Anthony about how Scott abused her and recorded everyone in the house. Detectives were still looking for B's body, but they were not able to find it. To this day, B has not been found. Even though there was no body, there was clearly something that happened to B. How could a murder trial work? Well, the evidence against Scott and Sarah was just too strong, and B was being abused so badly that it was easy to see why Scott did what he did. During the trial, B's friends mostly talked about how Scott took advantage of her, even though Scott had the nerve to deny everything. There are hidden cameras in the house and in the bathroom. When asked about them, Scott shockingly stuck to his false claim that he caught B hiding candy in the bathroom. I think it's pretty clear why Scott put cameras in the bathroom now that we know more. The police also found a Facebook post where B changed her relationship status from single to in a relationship with Luke. The post itself wasn't bad, but someone left a very strange comment below it. Even writing it out again makes me want to throw up. But Scott wrote under the relationship status, "Any boy who kisses you better have an image of me in your head." He added a black and white picture of himself to the comment as well. Even after this came to light, Scott kept denying everything and said B had just gotten out of the car while they were on their way home. Sarah, on the other hand, was a little more cooperative during the investigation. She did admit that she sent texts from B's phone while pretending to be her, but it was clear that the plan didn't work out very quickly because the texts didn't sound like B at all. She wasn't in them, and B's change of heart about lying about Scott taking advantage of her was so strange. The texts were not from B, as everyone who read them knew. Plus, they waited 3 days before officially reporting B missing. There were so many gaps in their stories that it didn't make sense. The jury finally came to a decision, even though they couldn't prove that Scott killed B and never found her body. The Cambridge Crown Court found Scott Walker guilty of murder in 2021, almost a year after B went missing. He was given a life sentence in prison. Scott's unwillingness to help with giving information about B's body was another part of his sentence. Because of this, Scott's case was covered by Helen's Law, the Prisoner's Disclosure of Information About Victims Act of 2020. This law was passed in November 2020. Helen's Law basically says that criminals can't get out of jail on bail if they don't say where they buried the body of the victim. After Scott's trial and sentence, Sarah was the only one left. She was also put on trial. However, there wasn't enough proof to charge her with killing B. There was no way to tell if she knew about Scott's bad plan before it happened. She was found guilty of perverting the course of justice, though, just like Scott, and was given a 6-year prison sentence. Even though the case against 17-year-old Bernadette Walker was over 3 years ago, her body still hasn't been found, and only Scott knows what happened to her. Authorities looked in many places and even used drones, other searching tools, and K9 units during their search. Sad to say, though, nothing came up. Detective Justine Jenkins, who is working on B's case, said, "We may never know the truth about what Scott did and why, but we do know that Bernadette accused him of abuse. Anthony B., B's brother, fought until the end to find out why his sister was killed so quickly and cruelly. He still has hope that the police will be able to find B and let him say goodbye properly." That being said, the air around HM Prison Full Sutton felt a lot cleaner than usual on December 22nd, 2023. It turned out that was because there was one less jerk breathing it. Scott had died that day at the age of 53. One bad thing about his death is that it now officially means investigators will never find out where B's body was hidden. It's still not clear why Scott didn't tell anyone where B's body was. He might have wanted to have the last word because he still wanted some kind of power over B's sad siblings. It's really hard for me to understand how terrible, awful, and gross this man was. You already lost. You know that. You were caught. You were charged. You were found guilty. Give up and let your family know where B is. The only reason Scott wasn't telling these things earlier was because he knew they would hurt B's siblings. B was a great photographer who tried her hardest to find the good in everyone, even the person who almost killed her. She still looked up to him as her dad. In this case, things just don't look good. I just wish we could do something. Sarah is going to be free from prison in 2027. Nobody knows what will happen to the other 9 children she had. I really hope that this awful woman was able to change her life while she was in jail, but I have to be honest this time. She was a terrible person, and maybe she still is. I don't think she can change. Let's be clear. Redemption is always possible, but sometimes, guys, if you've been a in this way or are currently locked up in this kind of situation, do not talk to your family. Do not get in touch with your friends. Talk to the police. You can get help, and people will believe you. If you can give the police even a small piece of evidence, that's better. But if you can't, you should still get in touch. It's never too early, but B is such a bad example that it's sometimes too late. Do not let this happen to you, and do not let this happen to someone else who is in the same situation. Do your best. I just hope that B's siblings are okay and can move on from this, because that's all we can do at the end of the day. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the darker side of reality. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit like and subscribe for more true crime content. Drop your thoughts or theories in the comments. Until next time, stay safe and never stop searching for the truth.